Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining on time. We'll give people a couple minutes before we get started. We appreciate having you. Enjoy the meeting.
We were born to be young and free. Soon we started learning. Books are made for burning. We were born to be family. Take my uniform and run into the sea. When I hear you sing from across the world, see the moonlight shine on the waterfall. When you go out my name, that's how I know.
For anyone who's just joining, we're just giving a couple.
Feel the same pain. When you go out my name, oh now I know that we share the same sun and we sing in the same rain. Hello, omnipresent, man in the moon. We were born to be a cherry tree. It's blossom and it's snowing upon my enemy. What if all those lines are lines at all? Keep it never big to keep the people small. When you go out my name, that's how I know that we cry the same tears and we feel the same pain. When you go out my name, oh now I know that we share the same sun and we
We're going to get started in about 30 seconds.
man in the moon. Hello, omnipresent, man in the moon. Hello, omnipresent, man in the moon.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kwesi Edidaku. I'm the head of programs for the Pathway program here at ALX. And as you all know today, as you can see on the screen, we are going to be having an info session with one of our partner universities today, Macalester College. And we'll be hearing from Sarah Paulson a little bit later. So just to kick things off for us, just walking through the agenda. So first, of course, we have the welcome and check-in. We're going to go through the info session itself. And then really where we want the meat of the session today will be in the question and answers. So if you look at the Zoom function, if you look at your Zoom bar at the bottom, at the far right, if you can't see it, if you click on the little three dots that say more, you'll see a Q&A function over there. If you have any questions that are coming up during the session, any question you think of or you hear something that's interesting for you, please put your questions in there. We're going to spend the last half of this session on questions and answers. So make sure you ask your questions. And then, of course, we'll have announcements and next steps at the end. So just before we start, a few things about how we engage as a community. You'll notice the chat function is open. You can chat with everyone else in the chat. Please make sure you interact respectfully with people, that you use respectful language when you're speaking. If you have a question that you like answered, use the question and answer. Please keep yourself on mute. throughout the call. We'd love to have your videos on to see you if it's possible. If it's not, we understand, it's no problem. This session will be recorded, so don't worry about that. And also, please do not do any recording of your own. So if you've got an AI assistant or any kind of recording tool, please don't use that here. ALX and Macalester will be recording the session and we'll be sharing it afterwards. So please respect those guidelines. All right. Now, without further ado, I'd love to invite the Senior Associate Director of International Admissions at Macalester College, Sarah Paulson. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kwesi, and for the entire ALX Foundations team. Just give me one moment as I get my presentation shared. All right. So again, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Sarah Paulson, and I use she, her pronouns. As mentioned, I am the Senior Associate Director for International Admissions at Macalester. And so I specifically work with international students and US citizens and permanent residents who go to school or live overseas. And I'm excited to have you join us today. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Macalester's values, talk a little bit about our location in the Twin Cities, and talk about our liberal arts and sciences education, opportunities available to our students, and outcomes of a Macalester education. And then I will do a bit of a deep dive into admissions and financial aid as well. First, a little snapshot of who we are. We have 2,142 students, completely undergraduate, and they come to us from all 50 US states and represent 108 countries, including 21 African nations. 14% of our students are international students, and roughly another 10% are US dual citizens. So while Macalester also offers the small class sizes, flexibility, and individualized attention that are central to any small liberal arts college experience, there are many things that we think make Macalester special. And the first of that being Macalester's values. Here are some of our students talking about some of Macalester's most important values: internationalism.
One of the first things that really struck me when I arrived at Mac is going to the Cafe Mac, which is where we eat, and actually see flags all around the campus center. It was just really, really awesome. Oh my God, look at all these different countries, and I can see mine as well. This is just really, really cool.
You learn how to see things from everyone's perspective. It makes you open to everything, and it prepares you to be in any position at any company, anywhere in the world.
I feel like the values that MAC represent is very visible around campus. I feel like it's a blur between international students and domestic students. People are, willing to get to know you and very curious about, what you bring to MAC. And that's what I really appreciate as an international student coming to Macalester.
Anyone coming from any culture, there's so many cultural orgs at MAC, and they're not just for international students, but also for the diaspora. And so you really get to blend with people who know of your experiences. I am part of the South Asian Student Org, and I'm also part of Art Alliance. And so all of these places are places I can meet with people from my cultures, from different cultures, and we can get together and share that even though we're so far from home.
I think as an international student myself, it's just really nice to, when professors open the space in class, to share your own perspective or maybe listen from a perspective that is not specifically the United States.
I think the people that walk out of here having had these experiences are more well-rounded people, more global citizens.
All right.
One of the first things that really struck
The video is great, but you probably don't need to hear it again. So, as you heard, Macalester is a mission-driven institution, and we are grounded in our values of academic excellence, multiculturalism, internationalism, and serving society. We are not afraid to say who we are. In fact, our mission and values are some of the primary reasons why many students choose to apply and ultimately enroll at MAC. As you heard, internationalism is particularly important to Macalester, and we are proud that we were one of the first colleges in the United States to not only recognize the value of recruiting international students to our campus, but creating a curriculum that incorporates various worldviews. This has been a priority for us since the late 1940s and actually led Macalester to create one of the first undergraduate international studies programs of its kind in the country. Ultimately, we want all of our students to dive into any of our programs deeply while learning to understand different global contexts and perspectives that are different from their own. And above all, Macalester gives students the framework, opportunities, and resources to connect what they are learning to the real world and hopefully consider how they can work to improve the world around them. Macalester is further distinguished from many other top liberal arts and sciences college by our unique location. We are one of the few top nationally ranked U.S. liberal arts and sciences colleges in a city. Located in the city of St. Paul, which is the state capital, Mac's beautiful residential campus is in the middle of one of the city's nicest, safest residential neighborhoods, with over 20 shops and restaurants within 5 blocks of campus. There's multiple public transportation stops on and near campus, which makes it easy for students to access all the great amenities of both downtown St. Paul and Minneapolis. Two cities that are so close together, we often just call them the Twin Cities. With just over 3.5 million people, the Twin Cities are large enough to have all the advantages of a larger urban setting, while not being so large that students feel overwhelmed or lost. Students can go to all kinds of concerts, museums, and professional sporting events and still be in class the next day. Personally, I'm a huge soccer fan, and so having Minnesota United, our professional soccer team stadium, only 5 minutes from campus is amazing. So, switching to academics, what are the liberal arts, or more accurately, the liberal arts and sciences? Basically, it's a philosophy of education that believes the best undergraduate education is flexible, broad, and centers the development of so-called soft skills, like critical thinking, strong communication skills, and being able to be adaptable and creative in how someone approaches problems. These are exactly the skills that employers need, no matter what you study. While at Macalester, I promise you will graduate with a strong grounding in these skills and more. Macalester's location and core values play a significant role in our students' academic experiences. In fact, over 50 classes that are taught each year include trips and/or projects off campus that work with various community organizations. Students choose from 66 areas of study. Some of our most popular majors include biology, economics, psychology, international studies, and computer science. But with the flexibility of the curriculum, it's common for our students to pursue a combination of subjects. For example, a student may choose to double major in economics and data science while adding a concentration in community and global health. Another student might choose to major in psychology and add minors in studio art and philosophy. Individual advising and time for exploration means students are able to do all of this and still complete their bachelor's degree in 4 years. Contrary to common misconceptions about the liberal arts, Macalester offers a robust and active science and maths community. Science and maths majors are some of our most popular majors, and 80% of science and maths students do some kind of independent research with faculty before graduation. But research isn't just limited to the maths and sciences. Across all disciplines, over 50% of Macalester students will have at least one independent research experience with a professor. So yes, you can even be a philosophy major and be involved in research. While there's a lot of great opportunities to learn on campus in the Twin Cities, with our commitment to global citizenship, study away is a huge aspect of the MAC experience. 60% of our student body will study away for a full academic semester. So that is essentially 14 or more weeks of immersive, significant study. That number does not factor in students who are doing shorter summer programs or trips over a winter break. We offer an extensive list of over 95 pre-approved programs in 50 different countries, covering every continent. Included in that list are several Macalester Study Away programs that we actually administer, and they include our popular semester program at The Hague. During that semester, students take immersive, intensive seminar classes and have visitor access to the EU criminal courts. And just like your academic journey at Mac, you don't navigate the study away process alone. We have a whole office dedicated to helping you figure out where to go and when to go and how to navigate that process. And if you are a student receiving financial aid, which programs will meet your financial needs. In addition to classes on campus, internships are a crucial part of Macalester's education experience. In a given year, on average, 300 students complete an academic 4-credit internship in the Twin Cities. Internships, research, and civic engagement are available to students not only during the summer, but also during the academic year. The ability to balance an internship during the semester with your 3 or 4 classes is yet another example of the benefits of Macalester's location in the Twin Cities. With over 200 internship sites within 13 kilometers of campus, students can gain experience in any industry they'd like, from 15 Fortune 500 companies like Ecolab and 3M to the state government. We have a dedicated internship office that helps students get these internships, whether it's over the summer or during the academic year. We also believe that learning happens beyond the classroom, and building community is important to us. As a residential campus, there is plenty of time for students to balance academic opportunities with social ones, including options like 21 varsity athletic teams and our award-winning debate society. In fact, our Ethics Bowl team recently won the national championship for the second time in 3 years. We also have a competitive MUN team, many cultural identity clubs like Africa, and even a rocketry club. Macalester is a residential campus with a number of housing options, and in fact, students are required to live on campus for the first 2 years. But after that, a popular option is for students to move just off campus and into their own apartments. Roughly half of our juniors and seniors live in apartments, most within 6 blocks of campus. They appreciate the added independence and no longer living in the residence halls while staying connected to the Macalester campus and community. This has been a lot of information thus far, but what do all these facts and programs actually mean for the student experience? At this point, I'd like to introduce you to a recent Macalester graduate. While not exhaustive of all the different ways students navigate their 4 years at Macalester, hopefully his story will give you an idea of what is possible. Sheikh came to Mac as an international student from Senegal and is one example of a Macalester journey. When asked what 3 words he would use to describe Mac, Sheikh said welcoming, challenging in a good way, and empowering. And the opportunities he was able to pursue during his 4 years reflect these words well. Macalester has a strong pre-orientation and mentor program for new international students, in addition to our general orientation programming, which really helped Sheikh start to connect with others right away. In addition, he made great connections through his residential first-year course in nanoscience. He knew he had an interest in STEM fields, so his first-year course provided an interesting starting point for options at Mac. However, he found some surprising crossovers and applications from his 2D design course, which he took as part of his distribution requirements. In particular, he found that this art class helped him with visualizing data. Macalester's location and resources allowed Sheikh to explore his interests across beyond the classroom, and in fact, he was able to have not 1 but 3 internships while at Mac. Proof that not only can international students access internships, they have a wide range of options. During his second year, Sheikh completed an unpaid internship at a local startup in the Twin Cities, working on data analysis and marketing. Although it was unpaid, he received a stipend through the Macalester Summer Internship Grant, a fund available to students to make sure they can have access to internships without the worry of finances. All of these experiences helped prepare him for his third internship, a competitive summer internship with the Brattle Group in Boston in economic consulting. But what really gave him an edge was the support he received from Macalester alumni. Several alums working in finance helped him not only prepare for the interview, but for the role itself. While Sheikh was busy with internships and academics, he still found time to be involved in a number of student clubs and organizations. He was involved in one of our cultural orgs, Africa, as well as playing on an intramural team, specifically soccer. And now, after graduation, he is working in a field he's very interested in and is working with the Federal Reserve Bank in San Francisco. So now that you've seen what an academic journey can look like, I want to highlight the outcomes and return on education associated with Macalester's education. As you can see from Sheikh's story, our students have excellent outcomes. Within 5 years of graduation, on average, 60% of Macalester alumni either already have or are in the process of pursuing an advanced degree. Our Career Explorations Office works with students from day one and excels at placing students in jobs, internships, and fellowships around the United States and the entire world. In a typical year, roughly 95% of students are employed, continuing their studies, or doing an internship or fellowship within 6 months of graduating. Roughly 95% of those who are employed tell us that they are working in a field that aligns with their interests. This next slide just gives you a small snapshot of what some of our recent African alums are doing. You can see there's a broad range, and also I just want to highlight that our graduates are doing things both in the US, but also are having quite successful careers returning to Africa as well. And of course, we've highlighted Fred Swaniker, one of our most prominent alums from Macalester. Now, in terms of admissions, we offer 3 types of application deadlines. For early decision, there are 2 rounds. The first is due November 1st, and the second is January 1st. For students who know that Mac is where they want to be, early decision can be a powerful option. In general, the acceptance rate tends to be higher in our early decision rounds compared to our non-binding rounds, partly because our early decision pools are smaller than early action and regular decision. And the binding nature means we can be 99% certain that a student we admit in early decision will come to Macalester. However, early decision is considered binding, and if you are admitted, you are making a commitment to attend. The important thing is to do your research and make sure that Mac is your first choice if you decide to commit to early decision 1 or early decision 2. For students who might be going through the Swaniker Scholars at Mac selection process, you would also need to submit an application by that November 1st deadline. We realize, though, that many students are not in a place to commit to Macalester through a binding early decision round. That's why we also offer 2 non-binding rounds, early action and regular decision, that allow students to consider all of their options before making a final decision. Early action, unlike early decision, allows you to apply early without the binding commitment. The deadline is November 1st, and students receive a decision by the end of December, but will still have until May 1st to notify us of whether they are accepting their offer of admission. So think of early action as peace of mind admission. Macalester is permanently SAT, ACT optional, and there is no fee to apply to Mac regardless of which round you choose. In fact, last year, 65% of our international applicants chose not to have an SAT or ACT score considered, and 67% of admitted international students chose not to have an SAT or ACT score. So again, we are truly test optional. Our review process is personalized and holistic. Our first goal is to make sure, through an evaluation of a wide variety of academic factors, that we believe you can be successful in our classrooms. After that, our readers focus on trying to figure out how you intend to make an impact in our community. Are you going to be well-rounded, particularly committed to one activity, club, or a cause, a vocal leader, or a great roommate? These are the things we want to know and that we gather through the application process. For financial aid, which is probably the section you all are most waiting to hear about, Macalester meets 100% of demonstrated financial need for all admitted students, including international students. There are no special deadlines or applications. All complete applications are automatically considered for merit scholarships, regardless of whether you applied with standardized test scores or not. Macalester is committed to meeting the full demonstrated need of every student we admit up to our estimated cost of attendance. There is no minimum family contribution expectation. Rather, we use the financial aid application materials to calculate a student's expected family contribution and subtract this amount from our estimated cost of attendance to determine a student's demonstrated financial need. For some families, their EFC could be 0, and therefore their financial aid package would cover all of the estimated cost of attendance, which includes tuition, housing, meals, health insurance, and estimated costs for personal supplies. That said, while most costs are covered by Macalester's financial aid, not all costs are. For example, international students should anticipate additional costs for arriving in the US associated with applying for an F1 visa, as well as additional out-of-pocket expenses during longer winter and summer breaks. Students who are offered admission and qualify for need-based aid can expect a 4-year financial aid package that is made up primarily of scholarships, a small Macalester International Student Loan, as well as campus employment, sometimes called a campus job or student employment. Financial aid plays a role in admissions decisions. This is necessary in order for Macalester to make sure our financial aid budget meets our promise of meeting 100% of demonstrated need for every student we admit. Therefore, the more scholarships a student needs, the more competitive the admissions process will be. In more recent years, we have given some additional attention to those high-need international applicants in our early decision rounds. So in general, while it's still a very competitive process, that tends to be the best chance for students who know that they will need a large amount of scholarship to attend, would be applying in a binding early decision round. Now, slightly separate from that, is the Swanaker Scholars at Mac program. The main difference is that if you are a finalist for Swanaker Scholars at Mac, you do not need to submit a financial aid application. We basically are, through our agreements with the foundation, have agreed that we will provide a full tuition scholarship, and then Swanaker Scholarship will cover the housing, meals, health insurance, and other fees. In addition, for our selected Swanaker scholars, Macalester will pay the required $350 SEVIS registration fee. That's part of the visa process. Note that that does not include the visa application fee itself, so you should still factor that in. We will also purchase one plane ticket from anywhere in the world so that you can arrive to campus in August for the required international student orientation program. And we also provide a one-time startup grant of $1,000 when you first arrive on campus to help with those initial startup costs as you wait for that first paycheck from your campus job. There are lots of ways that you can connect and continue to learn about Macalester if you're interested. We have great virtual programming, including information sessions, student campus tours. In the fall, we have faculty panels, and then over the summer, we have a Workshop Wednesday series, which provides deep dives into different aspects of the application process. So if you're curious about writing a personal statement or how to get teacher letters of recommendation. We also have a Workshop Wednesday specifically dedicated to financial aid and scholarships as well. And there are recordings that are always available in case those live programs are not at a great time for folks outside of the United States. And with that, I will say thank you. There's contact information as well. But with that, thank you all for your attention, and I look forward to hearing what some of our questions are.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Can we get some clap emojis for her in the chat? Please use your reactions. Please let's give her a hand for giving us all that information. We really appreciate that. Um, So we've gotten a lot of information here. I also see some questions have already started to pop up, which is good. So we're going to move into our Q&A. Just before we move into that though, I'm going to leave this screen up for everyone to see. It's the QR code where you can kind of give feedback on the session. I'll just leave this up while we're doing our Q&A. So let's get started. The first question, Sarah, for you, and there are a few here that I'll kind of group together. Is there an age limit for applying to Macalester College?
Great question. Technically, no. However, you should be aware that we operate as a very traditional residential liberal arts college. So the average age of our students tends to be from about 18 to about 22, 23 years old. We certainly do have some students who are older, particularly some refugee students that we have welcomed from places like the Kakuma camp. But we do not provide family housing. And we're not really set up for students who might be trying to come with their own families. So that would just be something to be mindful of if you're considering Macalester.
Thank you, that makes sense. A second question kind of related to, I guess, prior experience before coming to Macalester. If someone already has a bachelor's degree, are they able to apply to Macalester College?
Great question. You can. However, the main caveat is if you are applying basically to try and get a second bachelor's degree, you are not eligible for any kind of financial aid from Macalester. Our financial aid budget is not infinite, and so we really need to use all of that for students who are pursuing their first bachelor's degree.
Understood. Thank you. So please take notes. You are welcome, but no financial aid if it is your second degree. Now, on English proficiency, are there any English proficiency requirements someone might need to take? We've got learners coming from all over the continent, and English levels are at varying degrees.
Yep, absolutely. So we do require that students demonstrate a higher level of English. We don't provide an English bridge program at Macalester, and so professors are not expecting native level speaking or perfection, but you should be able to keep up with the in-class discussions, reading and writing. Even that first semester, students are expected to participate. We have small class sizes. Our average class size is 17. So there's really no hiding in one of our classes. And participation is often part of your overall grade. In addition, students are often expected to read several hundred pages each week in preparation for classes, and there's a lot of writing. Even math majors and chemistry majors will be doing a lot of writing and reading. Again, that all comes back to building those critical soft skills of communication and critical thinking. So you need to have a certain level. We do waive the English proficiency requirement for students who either are native English speakers or have been studying in a curriculum that is primarily taught in English. So that does cover a fair number of the Anglophone countries in Africa. There's a very short waiver request form that students can fill out. For students who are coming from Francophone countries or other language curricula, you would need to submit English proficiency testing. We accept the internet-based TOEFL, the IELTS, or we do accept Duolingo English test as well. While there's no minimum requirement, so if you have a complete application, regardless of what your English proficiency scores might be, you will get a full read in our process. But in general, the most competitive students are going to have at least a composite 100 on the internet-based TOEFL with at least a 22 or 23 speaking score. For the IELTS, we're generally finding the students with at least a 7.0 composite and at least a 6.5 speaking are competitive. And then for the Duolingo, in general, at least a 130 composite score. And on the production and conversation scores, usually at least like a 105 or so tend to be successful in our classrooms.
That's really clear. And you mentioned competitive, your most competitive applicants just now. What makes a competitive applicant to Macalester? What should people be
Yeah.
keeping in mind when if they want to be competitive for your
Mhm.
program?
Yep. So the foundation to being competitive is always first going to come back to academics. We are first and foremost a college, and so we want to make sure that students are going to be successful academically. Um, we take great pride in our admissions office, and especially the international team that I lead, in being very familiar with different types of curricula, whether they're international curricula like Cambridge or International Baccalaureate, as well as national curricula. So we are very familiar with WASIs, KCSEs, the different baccalaureates from Francophone countries. And so really making an effort to know that we are accurately understanding a student's credentials in context. Something that might be a little different for usually a lot of US, especially liberal arts colleges, compared to universities around the world, is that yes, we are very interested in seeing what your final graduation exams are, if that's part of your curriculum. So whether that's A levels or your WASIs or KCSEs, your Ethiopian graduation exams, whatever it might be, if you've taken them before you are applying, we want to see those. But if available, we also very much will require and look for internal marks. We understand that there are curricula where they are motivating you to study for those all-important exams, so they might be depressing those internal grades. But, you know, the way that our students are evaluated typically in our classes is more of a continuum throughout the semester and not just one all-important final examination. And so we want to kind of see how students are progressing in their internal work as they prepare for those exams. For students who are applying before they take those exams, you certainly can. You don't have to wait until after you've taken your graduation exams, but we would like to see, if possible, predictions for how you are expected to perform on those finals. It just gives us kind of the broader context. Something else that I will note, particularly for students who might be applying out of Zimbabwe or curricula where it's common where you might get through your kind of 10th grade or O-level rounds of exams, and then might be you see, oh, Macalester College, it's a college. I can do my upper secondary there. Um, we don't consider students who have only completed an O-level or a year 10 kind of level examination series. Our level of rigor in our curriculum is such that students really need to have completed those A levels or kind of that upper secondary level of examinations and curricula to be prepared for the expectations that Macalester faculty have. So that's all academic. Beyond that, though, we're, as I mentioned, looking for community members. We are a small school relative to the larger universities in the US and around the world. And so it's important to us to know what's the perspective that the student is going to add to conversations that are having on campus, who is going to help get involved in the different organizations on campus, what kind of roommate are you going to be? Um, so it's not just the academics that are driving decisions. And then finally, as I mentioned, financial aid and financial need is a factor in our decision making as well. I wish I had an unlimited money tree in the backyard where I could just, we could admit all the students who are absolutely qualified and would be great additions to Macalester, but due to space limitations, but also financial limitations, we just aren't able to admit. So that's the final thing I'll add about competitive. We are very fortunate and it's very humbling at Macalester to receive far more applications from students who do everything right. They are, in the top 1% of their country. They are heavily involved. They're um, very giving in their family and just they're amazing people, but we just don't have the space. And so even if you do everything right, unfortunately, the numbers just mean that we have to say no to many of those students. So it's hard to hear, especially because you're like, well, what was the difference between me and a student who did get selected? It's hard to tell. There are so many little things, and sometimes it's just the year that we're in the pool, so there's really no way to predict it. The only thing you can do is really make sure that you're doing your homework. Make sure you know what Macalester is about, not just that we offer great scholarships, but what is it about our programs? What is it about our community? Have you, through your application shown that you actually know who we are and what kind of experience we provide? Another way to look at this is there intentionality behind the app? Or is it very clear that we are just one of 25 applications that you're just trying to sprinkle around and you're not showing that intentionality? So that also helps.
100%. I think we've gotten a good sense about the competitive nature of the application to Macalester and what it would take. I'd love for us to spend a little bit more time in the application. We've got a few more questions on application before we transition into life at Macalester, which I'm sure people are
Yeah.
very curious about. So on the application, as we're talking about people completing the applications, documentation can be hard to come by. So depending on where you went to high school, you may have trouble accessing your high school transcripts or certain documentation to prove the things that you want to prove. Are there any alternatives for things like that for people who can't get access to the documentation they need, or how might people go about that in their applications to Macalester?
Yeah, I think one of the nice things about being a smaller school is I am your admissions counselor. Uh, and so you can always reach out to our office and explain your situation. We certainly have a lot of experience working, particularly with students who have been impacted by whether it's natural disasters, man-made disasters, uh, disruptions can come from anywhere. Students might be displaced or be stateless or be refugees. And so obviously that can make it very challenging to get some of these documents. We can be flexible, but there are certain things we absolutely just have to have so that we can, again, make sure that a student's going to be set up for success at Macalester. So for example, we might waive our requirement that those transcripts or mark sheets or scratch cards or what have you be sent by the school, an official, and we'll accept that from the students. We might request that students provide us with the information needed so that we can validate those wake exams or things like that. But if you can't give us any kind of documentation. You can't give us a way to look at those graduation exams, at least, even if you don't have those internal transcripts that we like to see. If we have nothing to evaluate in terms of your academic preparation, that's really not something we can be flexible on because we want to do our due diligence and we want to make sure that if we are admitting a student and they're going to come to Macalester, that they're going to graduate with their degree and not just struggle and have to end up leaving and have that type of disruption.
Mm, mm. Yeah. And is the Macalester application, do people apply directly only to the university, or is it also part of the common app? The common app, like how do those two
Yeah.
relate?
Absolutely. So we are a common application school. So that's really the primary way that students can apply. We do participate in the QuestBridge program, but students should know that if you are not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, Macalester will not consider you for the QuestBridge match. So that's something to be aware of if you're trying to go through that scholarship match process with QuestBridge. That said, if you have a QuestBridge application, you can submit that instead of a common application. But I would say 90% or more of our international students are applying through the common application.
Understood, understood. And then a couple more on the application. Do you accept transfer students or transfer credits? And how does that affect financial aid, if at all?
Great. So we do consider international transfer applicants who are applying for need-based aid. But something to keep in mind is transfer admission at Macalester tends to be even more competitive than first year admission. Part of that is due to the fact that we have a very high retention rate. That means the number of students who start with us in their first year come back for their second year. Our retention rate is generally about 96% or so. So there's just not a lot of space that opens up for transfer students. In a given year, we're probably looking to enroll about 20 transfer students total, whether domestic, international, et cetera. For transfer students who have financial need, our ability to admit a student in the transfer process really depends on what happens on our first year side, because the vast majority of our aid budget, especially for international students, is being devoted to first year applicants. So there might be a year where we're able to use some aid for an international transfer student, but there are years where we can't, because that has largely been accounted for. Um, in terms of transfer, I'll also add, if you have completed even a semester at a university, whether in Africa, in the US, anywhere in the world, you have to apply as a transfer student. You don't have the option of choosing to start over and just saying, well, I'm not going to try and transfer any of my credits. We need to see your education progression. And if you were in university, we need to know about that. Transfer students who are admitted will then have their transcripts reviewed by our registrar's office and given a credit evaluation, so they have an idea of how many credits they're able to bring in. You can only bring in up to a maximum of the equivalent of 2 years if you're coming in as a transfer student. So at least 2 years. So 4 semesters worth need to be credits taken at Macalester to complete your Macalester degree. And that's true even for the students who might be saying they're coming in for a second bachelor's degree. For a second bachelor's degree, you have to apply as a transfer student. Again, you are not eligible for aid, but if you were to be admitted, only up to half, essentially, 2 years worth of credits would be brought in, and the other half would need to be completed at Macalester. So it's not easy. It's not impossible, but definitely more options for first year applicants.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is something that you covered in your presentation. I'm seeing the question pop up, so we may need some reminders. Could you just walk quickly through the policies around SAT, ACT, AP tests, any kind of standardized testing? My understanding was it's optional, it's not required, but maybe you can just remind us or say it one time for the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2020, before we knew about a global pandemic, Macalester was planning to announce that we were going permanently SAT, ACT optional. It just happened that a pandemic happened and stole our thunder because everybody started going test optional. But we were very intentional about making that move. We had done up to 3 years of research beforehand, as well as preparation as an admissions team to know exactly how standardized tests did and did not impact our review. And actually, recently last year, we did a study to see if that was still the case. And the overwhelming determination was yes, we do not need SAT or ACT scores to accurately predict how a student is going to perform in their first year at Macalester. So it really is optional. What I always tell students, because there's always that question of should I send it, should I not send it? One, look at the middle 50% ranges with a grain of salt. Test optional means that students who only have the very best top scores are going to choose to send them. So that is inflating those middle 50% ranges, right? But if you have had the opportunity to take an exam like that, are you happy with the score? Do you feel like this is a vital piece of information to include with your application? Do you think that your application would be incomplete without an SAT, SAT or ACT score included? And if the answer is yes, then by all means include it. If the answer is no, you're not going to be penalized. As I mentioned earlier, last year, 65%, so the majority of our international applicants chose not to have a SAT or ACT score considered with their application. And 67% of admitted international students did not have an SAT or ACT score considered with their application. So it really is truly a test optional policy. In terms of AP exams, I think it's really up to a student and what they have access to. I think the one advantage of AP exams is that if you do end up coming to Macalester and you have usually a 4 or a 5, you can bring in some of that pre-matriculation credit with you. But in terms of, admission and being admissible, we're really not requiring it, especially if you're already doing a different type of curriculum. It's one thing if you are going to an American school and APs are kind of what that rigor is available in that curriculum. But if you're a student who is completing your national curriculum, or you're in the Cambridge A levels or the International Baccalaureate, those are already very rigorous types of curricula. I would much prefer that you focus your time on that rather than trying to then take on extra self-studying for AP exams. You talk about your precious time outside of your schoolwork. I want to see what you enjoy doing. Is it volunteering? Is it being involved in your faith community? Is it your family? We know that a lot of students have very significant family responsibilities, whether that's caring for grandparents or you've got younger siblings that you're responsible for, or cousins, or what have you. That's still a very valid and worthwhile experience. And, I don't want you taking time away from that to self-study for an AP exam that, at least in our process, really isn't going to move the needle that much in terms of admission.
Yeah. And just a note to everyone in the chat, I've seen a few questions around, advantages for ALX learners or ALX scholarship applicants. Those are questions for our ALX internal team. Don't worry, we'll handle all those in our internal sessions. Questions here, we'll try to keep about Macalester as much as possible. So one last reminder before we go just to our last question. I see we're almost running out of time even. Could you remind us of the application timelines for Macalester College?
Yep, absolutely. So the first rounds that students would apply through would be either through early decision 1, so that binding form of admission, or early action. Both of those deadlines are November 1st. That's when your common application is due. We are not a school that expects every single part of your application and financial aid application to be in on that deadline. As long as your common application is submitted by, before midnight your local time on that deadline, you will have met that deadline. And then we give additional time for things like transcripts, English proficiency scores, recommendation letters, early decision agreements, financial aid applications to come in. For students who apply through early decision 1, you would receive a decision from us in early December. If you're applying through early action, you would receive a decision from us by about mid to late December. The next round would be early decision 2, so also binding, but it's a little bit later. That deadline is January 1st. You would have a decision from us by the end of January. The final first year application round would be regular decision. That deadline is January 15th, and students would have an answer by early mid-March. In fact, we just released our regular decisions yesterday, so it was very exciting. I'll just let students know, though, that regular decision, while it gives you the most time to apply and work on your application, it is our largest and single most competitive round to be in. So that's just something to consider. For students who are thinking about applying as a transfer student, there's still time, even for a fall entry term, for this year, but that deadline is April 1st, and you would have a decision from us by early mid-May.
Nice, thank you. So now the final question, just before we move on to the last part of the session, what's your favorite thing about living and working at Macalester?
I love this question, but I also dread this question because there's so many things. And also I always feel like my answer can sound kind of standard, but it really is true. It's the people. I truly believe that if you take people away from a college or university, especially if you're looking at liberal arts colleges like Macalester, um, if you look at the programs that are offered, if you look at sizes, class averages, faculty to student ratios, they're all pretty similar. But it's really the people who are the lifeblood of a school. They are the ones that really determine the culture and the experience. And I've attended and have worked at several other liberal arts colleges over my career, but I think what is really special to me about being at Macalester is just the kindness that I see constantly, even as we are navigating really tumultuous times and very difficult world events and things that deeply impact members of our community. There always is at the core kindness towards each other, even as we are navigating those difficulties together. I also really appreciate how those core values are manifested within our community as well. Our students are incredibly smart, they're incredibly caring, but they're not pretentious about it. I think there's a little bit of that Midwest vibe that seeps in, and so they're very unassuming about the amazing academic work and research that they are doing, that you hear it and you're just like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you were doing summer research on moon rocks that was contributing to NASA. And you're just like, yeah, that's something I do. It was really cool. So I appreciate that, but also the outward focus. Students really are kind of asking that question of how do I take this interest, how do I take this academic knowledge and preparation and apply this in a way that is going to make a positive impact on an issue that I care deeply about, whether that is for my local community, for my country, for the world. Um, I It gives me a lot of hope to see just how our students and our alums are working to make the world a better place. And I, I think Fred Swaniker is just a Class A representation of that Macalester spirit, and what we hope to instill in our students and our alums.
Amazing. And I don't think there's a better note to end on than that. Thank you so much, Sarah. There are actually a few more questions that flurried in at the end. Where might people go to find out more questions? Who might they be able to talk to? Is there a contact they can reach out to find out more about Macalester?
Absolutely. So a great general email would just be internationaladmissions@macalester.edu. That's our general account. And that just makes sure that you're going to get an answer as quickly as possible. We're heading into eventually our summer months, and it's the one time of year that we get to start taking vacation. So it just helps ensure that you're going to get an answer as quickly as possible.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, so for anyone who still has questions, please internationaladmissions@macalester.edu. For now, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. Let's get some claps for Sarah with our emojis in the chat. Let's give her some appreciation for spending some time with us this morning, her time, this afternoon, or evening, most of other people's times as well. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. Okay, so we are coming towards the end of the session. Sarah has given us so much to think about. Just going to make a few quick announcements before we close, since we've got a bunch of pathway learners here. First one, just to clarify, term 2 is starting on Monday, March 31st. So you've got a little bit of time before term 2 starts. During that time, though, we'll have a lot of university info sessions and other community-oriented activities, so lots of stuff to keep you engaged while you also recharge. As you've made it through term 1, you knew how tough it was, and you're getting ready to go for that second term again. We've also got University Power Hours, University Application Power Hour number 5 with Nuri and Gavin tomorrow, Tuesday, March 11th at 2 p.m. GMT, where you can also get some more tips on applying to universities. And then finally, the end of term 1 feedback is out. It already should be with you. We'd love to hear from you, so please do fill out that end of term 1 survey. All the insights you give us in that survey and in the one I also shared earlier today will all do a lot to help us to improve all the programs and make sure you all have the best experiences. So I believe that's everything that we have right now. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great day, everyone. Bye.
We about to set this one right. We about to do this for all the kids, the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the sisters.
If anyone wants to